Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this very wonderful, unique Dialogues with Remarkable Souls today. We are broadcasting out of Asheville, North Carolina, and we hope that you are all having a beautiful day today. So let's take a moment and just tune in and allow your mind to just be open to receiving the wisdom from our very wonderful guest today, Neale Donald Walsch, who never arrives late for dinner. If anything, he arrives early. So indeed, we have the comedy team here today. So let's just tune in for a moment and let go of the day, let go of your to-do list, just let go of everything that's happening in your life and just be here. Be with us, be with your spirit, be with your body, be with the earth. And please make sure you have some water handy in case you get thirsty during this interview. So my guest today needs no introduction, really. And I'm amazed at how many books he's written over the course of his lifetime. I remember going through a very emotional, troubled time in my life back in the 90s. And I read his first 3 books, Conversations with God. And the one that I really liked the most was book 2. It was a fascinating book. And I was thinking, as I was reading these books of like, how can this guy talk to God? It's really amazing. He's writing these books about conversation with God. Just pretty amazing. So I'm sure he has evolved over these years. Wow, almost 3 decades. And I'm very happy to meet Neale today. I have known of his work since the 90s. And I feel very blessed and honored to have him on Dialogues with Remarkable Souls. So Neale doesn't need an introduction. We're not going to read his bio. We're just going to get into today how we can help humanity move through these great earth changes and all of the experiences that are happening on the earth for many people. And perhaps we can start out with asking Neale what he sees, what he envisions as the course of humanity in this age of Aquarius, in this year 2021. So Neale, the platform's yours. Take as much time as you want. And on occasion, I may interject another question or two. So thank you for being with us. And here you are. Go for it, bro.
Thank you. Just a quick note to my staff who's off camera watching. I'll be free in about 8 hours. I was given as much time as I want. I'll see you guys in about 7 or 8 hours. Okay.
You can tell he's a very funny fellow. Oh, God.
The main message of Conversations with God is that all of us are having conversations with God all the time. We're simply calling them something else because our culture has trained us to do that. We've been culturalized, if I could coin a word, we've been culturalized away from announcing that we are talking directly to God. So we call our communications from God moments of inspiration, or even women's intuition, or an epiphany, or a brilliant idea, or whatever words we think we can get away with to allow ourselves to describe a singular experience that all of us have had in our lives. So the first message that I received in Conversations with God is that, because I asked, of course, and when I was having my process, I wrote down, why me? Why would you choose me as the person with whom to have this conversation? And she said, no, Neale, sweetheart, you don't understand. I talk to everyone all the time. The question is not to whom is God talking? The question is, who's listening?
Mhm.
So if you find it interesting to listen to me, you may want to take down and write down what I'm saying to you. I did not set out to write a book. I am really going to get to answer the question you asked me in a minute. But I want to just give a little bit of a background for people who are wondering about this whole process and where I'm coming from with my answers. I didn't intend to write a book. I never dreamt that anyone in the world would ever see my personal handwritten notes. I was really journaling, if you please, just writing in my journal, almost like a diary. And it never, as I said, never occurred to me that anybody else, not even anybody in my family, much less somebody across the planet, would ever see these scribbled notations that I was taking. But at one point, in the middle of what became book one, I was told, you will make of this a book, and it will be accessed by many people. And I thought, Kenji, now I got you. Now I got you. Because everything that I was hearing until that time was largely conceptual, not largely, completely conceptual in nature. It's theoretical, if you please. It could be, it could not be. There's no way to know. Okay, interesting information, but conceptual. But now here was a statement of fact that I was, how to put it, receiving. This, you will make of this a book, and it will be accessed by many people. I thought, we'll see about that. That's an interesting statement. And that is a statement that can be measured. That is, we can look at it and see whether it comes true or not, because it's not simply theory or concept. So I sent it off to a publisher or two, knowing in advance, no one is going to publish this. I mean, I could just see a publisher somewhere on the East Coast going out to the workroom floor and saying to his staff, hold the presses. I got a guy here who's talking to God. See, I knew it was not going to happen. Nobody was going to publish these middle of the night mental meanderings. But in fact, the publisher that I sent it to agreed to publish it. Very relatively small publisher. It wasn't a major publisher, independent book publisher on the East Coast. But he thought, we're going to put this book out. I find it fascinating. And it, not bragging, but just noticing, it went on to sell several million copies and went on to be translated into 37 languages and went on to be read around the world. And so I thought, interesting, improbable, but fascinating that this information I was receiving turned out to be true, not just simply true, but true in spades, in big time numbers. So I then began to pay a little more attention to what I want to say, hearing and what I was receiving in this process that I have called Conversations with God. And out of that came the remaining 8 books in the so-called dialogue series. Now, what I was told in that dialogue series, to get directly to your immediate question, is that we are now moving through, in this particular period of our species evolution, a critical moment, a time when, number one, humanity is losing patience with itself, a time when we are presented by life itself with an opportunity to make what might be the most important decision we've made in, I don't want to say in decades or even in centuries, but in millennia. One of the most important decisions we might have been invited to be made in millennia. And that decision is this: we are being invited to decide who we are. I mean, quite literally, who am I? Am I simply a physical entity, a chemical creature, a life form, not altogether different from a bird in the sky or a fish in the sea, more complex perhaps, fair enough, perhaps the most sophisticated life form on the planet, although that is arguable, but perhaps, but in the end, basically that's it. I'm born, I live, I die, and I was one of the life forms that populated the planet. Is that who I am? Or is it possible, just possible, that I'm more than that? That I'm what we would call, in today's language, a spiritual entity, or in the articulations of some religions, a soul, if you please. Could I be a metaphysical entity that has a body and has a mind? But is it possible that this is not who I am? And that this is not who I am? That this is simply something I have. And this is something I have. But that who I am is much larger than that and has no beginning and no end. Is it possible that I always was, am now, and always will be? And if that's possible, if I choose to embrace the notion that, yes, that is my true identity, then I needs must ask another question, a powerful question, a question that bears directly on what's going on the planet in these days and times. That question is, what am I doing here? If I truly am a spiritual entity that lives forever, why in the world have I placed myself here in this time and place, in this location in the cosmos? What am I up to? What's the point of all this? What is my life purpose? And how does any of that relate to what I'm noticing going on in the world? Do you know how many people live their entire lives and never ask themselves those kinds of questions? I know that you have asked those kinds of questions, or you wouldn't be here as part of this audience. But have you any idea how many people live their entire lives and don't even approach those questions, much less provide themselves with an answer? And that's why the world has been the way it has been for these many centuries. And that's why the world is the way it is. So the opportunity before us is to use the present circumstances in which we find ourselves, the condition of the world in many, many aspects, economically, spiritually, politically, socially, all the ways that we experience our present moment, to use these particular conditions, events, and circumstances as tools with which to fashion our tomorrows based on our understanding of today and who we are and why we're here. So here's my notion about that. I think we're in the middle of and I was told actually in the book Tomorrow's God, I was told in the dialogue, we're in a particularly critical 30-year period, a three-decade period. You know, just to break the flow here for a minute, there was a period of time not that long ago, cosmologically speaking, not that long ago, called the Renaissance. And you may remember from reading your history that during the period that we know as the Renaissance, everything changed. I mean, just about everything changed about the way it was to be human. Art changed, music changed, culture changed, literature changed, spirituality, of course, our beliefs changed, politics changed. The way we were being human on the planet with each other, our interactions at just about every level, even economics, changed dramatically as a result of what we refer to as the Renaissance. My dear friends, we're in the middle of the second Renaissance. And like the first Renaissance, this will likewise take approximately 30 years from start to finish. My estimation is right now, because I was told this 10 or 12 years ago, that we're about 1/3, maybe a little bit more than 1/3 of the way through that period. And I was told that this 30-year period will bring up enormously impacting events in our collective and individual experience. And by golly, if that isn't what's happening right now on the planet, then I don't know what is. I never thought I would live to see the day. I'm older than I thought I would be in this lifetime. Frankly, I thought I'd be leaving earlier, but here I am, an old geezer, and still trotting along and doing fairly well health-wise. Thank you very much. But I never thought I would see the day come where conditions would be what they are right now on this planet. And by the way, I'm not just even talking about simply the political conditions, which are in a state of upheaval almost eternally, nor am I talking necessarily about economic conditions, which are also in a state of semi-collapse around the world, nor am I even talking about health conditions or other physical aspects of the life that we're living right now. I'm talking about all the conditions, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional conditions. And one condition in particular, perhaps you've noticed it as I have. There's something going on right now on the planet in terms of the energetics that are being projected into the noosphere by all of us simultaneously. I could put it in one word: alienation. I have never seen in all of my years on the planet our civilization so alienated from each other, socially alienated, economically alienated, politically alienated, spiritually alienated. And you know what's ironic? You want to see how deep this alienation has gone? Even the one tool, the one invention, if I could use the word, searching for the right word here, even the one innovation that we've come up with in the past 25 or 30 years, the internet, social media, even that, which we thought was going to be our saving grace. Oh my gosh, a chance to talk to each other, a chance to connect with each other, a chance to finally experience our sense of community, one with the other, has done exactly the opposite. It's tearing us apart. You know how fascinating it is? The other day, I saw something on the internet, on one of the social media platforms that I never thought I'd ever see on social media. Some guy was explaining his political point of view. And in the comments section, somebody else said, you know what? Interesting ideas. I agree with you. I've changed my mind.
Wow.
You haven't ever seen that. You don't see that on social media. Nobody ever says, I've changed my mind because of what I just heard from you. No. It's arguing, it's fighting, it's debating, it's vitriolic. And in some cases, it even becomes verbally abusive. We haven't even remembered how to be loving and caring and collegial with each other. We've allowed our differences to create divisions and our contrasts to create conflicts. What is that about? Why? What's behind it? This is the biggest problem in the world today. And I'm not seeing any worldwide religious leaders, political leaders, captains of business and industry. I'm not seeing any person with a high profile, and sadly, none in a profile of a spiritual leader, not the Pope, not the Archbishop of Canterbury, not the chief rabbi, not the head ulama. Nobody is stepping forward and saying, you know what? There's a reason why we are all so alienated. The biggest problem in the world today is the beliefs that we hold about who we are, about what life is about and about this entity or this element that some of us call God or Yahweh or Brahman or Jehovah or whatever word it pleases us to use to refer to that ineffable essence that we call the divine. We have a challenge here called the God dilemma. I'm not sure whether you guys realize it, but there are 4,300 religions on the face of the earth right now. By the way, I didn't make that number up. Google it. Ask Google, how many religions are there in the world today? And they'll tell you 4,300 identifiable organized religions on the earth today. They'll tell you something else that's fascinating as well if you ask this question. What percentage of the world believes in a higher power? Sociologists have taken surveys asking that question as recently as 2 years ago. And over the past 25 years, in every culture on the planet, the statistics come up virtually identical. The number, you'll be surprised, 8.5. Let's just round it off and call it 80% of the world's people believe in some kind of higher power. We just can't come to an agreement about what it is, who it is, what it wants, how it works, and how to move through life in concert with it. That's why there are 4,300 religions, because we can't agree on anything that's critical for us to understand about this higher power. So that's why the world is the way it is. And that's why we're experiencing what we're experiencing now on the planet, excuse me. So when I'm asked, what is my prognosis? Where are we going from here? I say we have about 20 years, more or less, to come to a new idea. I mean, collectively, as a species, a new idea about who we are, why we're here, what is the purpose and function of life when all is said and done, and tell us what is the best new idea we could construct about this entity we call the higher power, or in some languages, God. What's true about all of that? And so I've gone across the globe in the past 25 years asking an interesting question of my audiences. Is it possible, just possible, that there's something we don't fully understand here about God, about life, and about ourselves? The understanding of which would change everything? Ask yourself that question as you go to sleep tonight. Is it possible? Just possible. I know we think we have all the answers. And I know that most of the religions, especially in which 80% of the world agree, or with which they agree, most of those religions say, no, we have the answers. The answer is right here. It's in the book. Just read the book. It's right here in the book. Make sure you read the scripture. You have to read the right scripture, of course. You read the wrong scripture, you're going to hell. But if you read the right scripture, then you'll have the answer. So we think we already have the answer. But before you fall asleep tonight, sincerely ask your heart a question. Is it possible? Just possible? That we don't have all the data yet? That there's more data to be understood? More data to come in, if you will, about God and about life and about each other? The understanding of which would change everything and create a totally new culture, a totally new ethic on the planet, because that's what's now needed. And to answer the question I was asked, that's what's now going to occur, unless it doesn't. But what we're invited to create right now on the planet in the next 15 to 20 years is a new global ethic. That is a new way of understanding who we are and how we can best relate to each other, best relate to this experience called life, and best relate to, yes, this aspect of life that some of us call God. See, we're not using the higher power. We agree that there is a higher power. We're pretty convinced of that. But most of us not only are not using it, most of us are actually misusing it. That is, we are bringing the metaphysical energetics of life into our life in a way that is creating everything we do not want to create. I don't know whether you've noticed it or not, but nothing on the planet is working the way it was designed to work. You understand? Our political systems were created to produce greater opportunity for all nations to get together and interact as one, for nations to get along better with each other. But our political systems, and also people's different political points of view, those political systems were put together to make things easier for us to interact with each other. They've done exactly the opposite. Exactly the opposite. They've made it harder. Our economic systems were put together not to make everyone equal, but at least to provide everyone equal opportunity, for certain. But you know what they've done? Exactly the opposite. They've done exactly the opposite. Our social systems were put together to allow us to get along with each other at every level of human interaction easier and more pleasantly and more wonderfully and more joyfully and more beneficially. And they have done exactly the opposite. And worse yet, saddest of all, our spiritual systems, created to bring us closer to God, and as a result, closer to each other, have done exactly the opposite. Separated us from each other. More wars have been fought in the history of humanity in the name of God than for any other single reason. What is it that we don't understand here? Obviously, there's something we don't clearly understand, the understanding of which would change everything. So what I'm suggesting in a book that I've written just recently called The God Solution is that we create a new definition, that we globally embrace a new idea of God. And here's my striking idea. I'm sorry to have to describe it as a striking idea because it's so obvious. It should not be a striking idea. It should be clearly obvious, but it's an astonishing idea in the sense that no one so far, that is not very many people in the organized religions of the world, or in any group for that matter, are embracing this idea of God. Here's the idea. Supposing we define God not as an entity, a physical being with long flowing white hair and a white beard and maybe even spectacles, and who has a habit of wearing blue shirts and speaks English, of course, and is male naturally, because you can't be a god if you don't have a penis, and so it's understandable. Yeah. Is that who God is? Who then sits in judgment and condemnation and punishes us for disobeying the rules he's laid down? Has what God done is create a fiefdom? Has God created a kingdom of fiefdom on the planet with all of us being his minions, that we must do as he requests? And if we don't do as he asks and as he commands, then we will in fact be sent to hell. Is that our highest notion of what God is? Or is it possible? Here we go again. Just possible that we've misunderstood, completely failed to comprehend the actual nature of divinity. What if the divine, what if what we call God was not an entity sitting on a throne someplace in the clouds? And most of us understand that. But what if God was simply a self-conscious, fully self-aware, creative, energetic, a life force, if you please, the prime essence, the essential essence that flows through, in, and as everything in existence? And supposing that prime force, that essential energy could be felt, was feelable by human beings, that we could sense that energy when it flows through us, in us, as us. And what if we had a word we could put to that energy? Two words, in fact. Supposing we called that energy pure love. Now, if we could agree that the energy is pure love, now, by the way, when I give lectures on this topic, people start raising their hands. Ah, Neale, nothing new. I sat here for all these minutes thinking I'd hear something new from you. God is love. That's new. Of course, God is love. Hardly anybody would argue with that. We all understand that God is love. But then I have to stop them. Wait a minute. I didn't say God is love. You didn't hear me say God is love. I said God is pure love. That's a particular kind of love. That's a particular brand, if you please, of love that demonstrates and expresses and projects in a particular way that's totally different from simple love as we have known it or understood it or expressed it in our human experience. Yeah, what's the difference? My audience asks, and I say, well, it's really quite simple. Pure love needs nothing, hopes for nothing, requires nothing, and commands nothing in return for the giving of it. Pure love arises from the source of pure love itself and experiences the joy of the giving, the joy of the expressing as its return and as its reward. It is so joyful in the experience and expression of it that it would not ever even ask for or even hint that something must be given back to me. No, you don't understand. I'll be glad to give you this love, but you have to give me this. I'll give you this but you have to give me this. See, love is not a trade arrangement, like trade arrangements between nations, that countries on the planet enter into trade agreements. That's not love. That's not pure love. We think that that's love. We think that many of us do. I shouldn't condemn all of us, but many people, I'm going to say the largest number of people, get into relationships thinking that, well, love is kind of I wouldn't put it that way, but it's basically a trade arrangement. I'll give you what I got. You give me what you got. We'll have a trade agreement. And on the 14th of February, when we celebrate Valentine's Day, I'll send you the perfect Valentine's Day card. My beloved, my dearest, my life, my greatest love. I trade you very much. And I'll never stop trading you. I will trade you until the end of time. But if you stop trading me, if I don't get from you what I got into this relationship to get from you, the deal is off. And where do we get an idea like that? Our idea about God. I've just described the teaching of most of the world's religions about God. We actually tell our children and share with our cultures, this is how God interacts with us. You know what? I love you guys. I love you. And I'll give you all the good things in life. But you got to give me back what I need to be happy. I need to be worshiped. I need to be obeyed. And I need to be honored in only a certain way, by the way. There's only one way. If you don't come to me through this particular doorway, I don't care how nice you are. I don't care how compassionate you are. I don't care how caring or understanding or forgiving or pleasant or generous you are. You could be all those things. And that's not very lovely, but you're going to hell anyway. You're going to hell anyway because your actions don't mean nothing to me. You know what? You got to come to me through this particular doorway or you're out of here. I know it seems a bit harsh, but them's the rules. What can I tell you? That's how it is. And because we believe in a God like that, we have modeled God's behavior and made it our own. Hey, if it's good enough for God, good enough for me. So relationships between nations, relationships between races, relationships between genders, relationships between people of different sexual realities, relationships between conservatives and liberals, relationships between all people are based on that model. You gives me what I need from you, and I'll give you what you need from me. But baby, you better be clear that you got to trade me what I need to get from you. And if you disagree with me about this, I will condemn you and I will punish you. What the world desperately needs now, and what I believe we're creating in the next 20 years, is the biggest civil rights movement of all. We've heard of civil rights movements that have been conducted and that have arisen around the world. I call this the civil rights movement of the soul, the biggest civil rights movement of all. A civil rights movement for the soul, freeing humanity at last from the oppression of its beliefs in a violent, angry, and vindictive God. Can we say that God loves us without condition and needs nothing back from us? And then can we use that as our new model, as our new global ethic, and overlay that ethic on our political, on our economic, on our social, and on our spiritual systems, so that at last we can turn right side up those institutions and cause them to create and to produce what we generated those systems to create? Must we continue to live in an upside down world where everything's producing exactly the opposite of the result we wanted it to produce? Or is it possible that we could simply get our most fundamental understanding accurately understood and accurately and totally expressed at last? That's what I call the God solution. And the God solution allows us to use the metaphysics of the universe, which is where the power of God is, by the way. We're talking about metaphysical power, energetic transfer. See, I'm sure you know this. This is not new information. Nobody's going to walk away from this conversation and go, never heard of that. But are we applying what we've heard a million times? That life is, in fact, nothing but energy. Energy impacts energy itself. Energy is the element of reality that impacts upon itself. Like, if you please, to use a simple illustration, pouring boiling hot water into ice cold water to create a third thing that is neither this nor that. That's how we can use the metaphysical energy of the cosmos intentionally, with clarity and with purpose. But how many of us are doing that? Not enough to make a difference right now, but that's where we're going in the next 20 years. I'm sorry. That's where we're going in the next 2 decades, unless we're not.
Let me ask you this point. So what if someone comes up to you and says, I agree with what you've been saying. That is my vision. I want to feel that connection once again, but I'm somehow not able to do it. What is your suggestion?
Help someone else do it.
Beg your pardon?
Help someone else do it. Whatever you want for yourself, give to another. If you want to experience more patience in your life, cause someone else to experience more patience in theirs. You want to experience more love in your life, cause someone else to experience more love in theirs. If you want to experience more understanding in your life, cause someone else to experience more understanding in theirs. Conversations with God made it very clear to me. Neale, the formula is very simple. Whatever you wish to experience more of, be the source of that in the life of another. And so I have 3 magic words written on my bathroom mirror that I read every morning. Be the source. You see, we can be the seeker for the rest of our lives. I'm seeking a raise from my boss, more love from my wife, more understanding from the world, more honorifics from the planet. I'm seeking, whatever I think I need to seek to be happier. On the other hand, if I become the source of that which I had been seeking, I need to ask no one else for anything. I simply source myself. It's magic. It's a magic formula that I was given in conversations with God. To be, in fact, resourceful. To be the source of that which I wanted more of. It's so magical that I could call myself a sorcerer.
That's good.
So the answer to the question is, whenever I want anything in my life as a direct experience, including a deeper, richer closeness to God, be the source of that experience in the life of another. And boy, has that changed my life in the past 25 years. Wow. By the way, this is what every great spiritual master, and I'm not one of those, I'm not describing myself as one of those, but when I observe those people that we have called spiritual masters, gurus, teachers, every one of them has followed that formula. None of them are looking to be sourced by something outside of them. Every single one of them, to a person, has used their life to source others with what it is they most wished to experience, including their closeness to God. So, whenever I find myself not feeling close enough to God, I've kind of lost touch, which happens to all of us, by the way. I've strayed from the path, I've gotten away from it, I've kind of lost touch with the energy. I give a class, I announce a lecture, I go downtown to the local library, wherever I have to go. I have to stand on the street corner and just start talking to people. But I don't have a problem finding people who want to feel closer to God and closer to love and closer to each other. Just walk out of my house. They're all over the street. Or announce an online lecture, and I'll have 600 people showing up. So this is not problematical. The only question is, once the people show up, will I be there to show them what I want to experience within myself? When I give to others what I want to experience in myself, I realize I had it all along. And what flows through me sticks to me. I could, of course, be wrong about all of this, but I don't think so. That's why many thousands of years ago, somebody put it much more eloquently than I will ever put it. He said simply, do unto others as you would have it done unto you. It's already quite simple.
That goes with the saying, as you give to others, it is given unto thee.
Of course. What would it take for the world's people in largest number to embrace such a simple notion? Results. They would have to realize that we are operating under a system that is foundationed upon a false premise. The false premise that we hold about life itself and each other is simply this: We think we're separate from each other. We've actually bought into a cosmology of separation based on our understanding, our earliest understandings of what we have called the higher power or the greater reality, or if you please, God. We have bought into, that is, the 8 out of 10 of us who believe in a God at all. Of those 80% of human beings who believe in a higher power, the largest number of them, by far, hold the notion of God as separate from us. That is, God's up here somewhere, and we're down here. And never the twain shall meet, except perhaps maybe on Judgment Day, when we all know that Kenji is in big trouble.
Yeah, I'm in big doo-doo.
And so that's how we hold God. That's called separation theology. A separation theology built on the notion that God is up here and we're down here and we're separate from each other. Now, that wouldn't be so bad if that's where it began and ended, but the problem is that a separation theology inevitably produces a separation cosmology. That is, a cosmological way of holding the life experience itself as a system of separation. Everything is separate from everything else. I'm not the tree. The tree's over there outside the window, and I'm over here. I'm not the animal. The animal's over there, and I'm over here. And I'm certainly not you. You're over there, and I'm over here. So we're separate from each other. You know what? Even that wouldn't be so bad if it was just simply a belief system. But the problem is it doesn't end there, because a separation cosmology inevitably produces a separation psychology. That is an individual holding, an individual experience of myself as being all alone out here. When I go to bed at night, when I wake up in the morning all by myself, it's me against the world, doing the best I can. I've got some friends. I've got some family, maybe. I've got a few people who, but you know what? When I put my head in the pillow at night, I'm all alone. It's just me. And so I live in a separation psychology. And if you don't think that that psychological holding of life has nothing to do with the way you behave in life, watch how you behave. And watch how humanity is behaving. But you know what? Even that wouldn't be so damaging if it began and ended there. But the problem with a separation psychology is that it inevitably produces a separation sociology. That is, entire societies that group themselves and call their groups separate from each other. Conservative and liberal, gay and straight, black and white, short and tall, good and evil, male and female, created he them. All groups of people, a sociological system of separation into groups. That's what's creating our alienation. And you know what? Even that would be fixable if it began and ended there. But the problem with a separation sociology is that it inevitably creates a separation pathology, pathological behaviors of self-destruction, observable throughout human history. So now we're talking about a separation theology that creates a separation cosmology, that produces a separation psychology, that generates a separation sociology, that produces a separation pathology. And that's where we are this day. Now, if I can understand that so simply, the solution is just as simple. All we have to do is say, the day of separation from God is over. God is not just pure love. God is one with us, that of which everything is comprised and that which has placed its energetic into everything that exists. Now our opportunity is to create not just a new global ethic, but a new global behavior that arises out of a new understanding. I now know the answer to my question. Who am I? Just a spiritual entity? Not just a spiritual entity. I am an individuation of divinity, as are you. And when we hold that as our awareness, we change the world. And every spiritual teacher who has shared that message has done so and touched the lives of billions. And now it's your chance to do that. Because in this day and age, we have the technology with which to do it. Imagine what's going on right now. I'm talking to you around the world from a room in my home, visually and audibly communicating with you right now. You understand that when I was 25 or 35 or 45 or even 55, such a thing would have been unheard of in my life? Now is our chance. This is the moment. And you can play a role that you might never have imagined you could play. So here's my challenge to you. It starts small, by the way. You don't need a, excuse me. It starts small. You don't start out to try to change the world. You start out to try to change yourself, obviously. I know I'm being trite. I know you've heard all this before. But can we change it from words we've heard to ideas that we live? So here's a tool that I have found immensely useful in my own life. I say in my mind, I would never say it out loud, by the way. Nobody would understand. Nobody would understand. They would maybe even try to harm me, but I say it in my mind, quietly to myself. Whenever I approach any other human being for the first time that day, whether it's my beloved life partner, or a friend across the street, or a man across town, or a person across the world, I say the same thing in my mind as I see myself approaching that individual for the first time that day. Here's what I say, and here's what I challenge you to say in your mind. You ready? This is very challenging now. I have come that you may have life, and that you may have it more abundantly. Your day will be made better today. Your life will be made better today, because I have passed through it. I promise you.
Beautiful.
Dare you, double dare you to use that simple confirmation at the beginning of every interaction with everyone with whom you interact. But be careful. Be very careful. This is metaphysics at the highest level. And you could change your life in 90 days. So if you
Neale,
don't want
can you say that one more time for our audience?
Sure. That one more time for our audience.
Comedy team.
Oh, you didn't want me to say that. You want me to actually say the say. Okay. I misunderstood completely. Here's
God.
Here's what I say. Excuse me, something caught in my throat. You should never have a pepper sandwich before you go on the air.
Oh no, never. No.
Never.
And no garlic sandwich either.
No. Here's what I say in my mind. I have come that you may have life and that you may have it more abundantly. Your life will be made better this day for my having passed through it. I promise you. I promise you. You see, my dear friends, that's why I'm here. What do you think I'm doing here? What do you think you're doing here? That's why you're here. When we understand finally who we are and why we're here, everything else that we thought we were here to gather and to experience falls in on us automatically. Or as somebody a few years ago said, don't go around asking, what are we to eat? What are we to drink? Wherewithal will we clothe ourselves? Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you. So raise not your fist to heaven, and curse the darkness not, but be a light unto the darkness, that you might know who you really are, and that all those whose lives you touch will know who they really are as well. I could, of course, be wrong about all of this, but I don't think so.
Neale, we know that you and God have conversations. So perhaps the next question would be, can God be seen visually? And can God, how should I say? Well, I know what you're going to say, and can God be known directly?
Well, God can be seen, of course, by just opening your eyes. Just look. And even those of you who may not have eyesight, because I know some people who are actually without sight, God can be seen in the way that all of us see life itself, and how all of us see each other, and how all of us see ourselves. I hate to be metaphorical. I know you want a more factual answer, a more grounded answer. But you were right. You knew how I was going to answer, because there's no other way to answer the question. You know, I see God when I see my beloved across the room, when I do see my neighbor across the street, when I do see that person on the other side of the world. That's when I see God. And if I fail to see God there, then there's no way in the world I'm going to see God anywhere else. I asked God in my conversation with God, why did you make it possible for us to just recognize you, to recognize, that is to know again
To
you,
know again.
to recognize, to recognize. What does it take? And God said, I will take whatever form it pleases you to see me in. But you cannot deny me. You don't deny me 3 times before the cock crows, because if you're not careful, you will deny what you're looking at and call it something else. So the answer is yes, God can be seen if we open our eyes and see God everywhere. I'm sorry. I cry at my own stuff.
That's good. We like that.
So that's my answer. Yes, God can be experienced in us. The moment that we allow love to flow through us without condition. We've all had the experience, by the way. We've all had the experience of loving something or someone without condition. And when you have that experience, you will know what it feels like to be in touch with God. You will say to yourself, now that's who I really am. And the decision to access that more often and more often and more often until we can say we've accessed it always and in all ways. That decision arises out of a simple commitment, a determination. There's got to be a better way to be human. There's got to be a better way. There is something that I have not fully understood, the understanding of which would change everything. I got it. I got it. And I'm ready.
Those of you that are on the chat box, actually, let's do this. Let's go. I'm going to change this because the energy is really nice right now. Change it to gallery view here. If any of you want to respond to Neale, not ask him a question, but respond to his presentation today, either raise your hand or unmute yourself.
Why?
Okay.
I'm going to be terrible here, Kenji. Why can't they ask me a question? Maybe they want a question. Maybe they want to ask me a question.
Okay, Sunshar, I know she's always full of questions. She raised her hand right away, so you're unmuted, dear. Go ahead.
Neale, it's so great to see you. Oh, I've never seen you in person, but boy, this is a real treat. I think it was back in '95 or so that to go back to the question of, you know, how do you get back in touch with God? And you said, teach it, go out and teach a class. And I taught all 3 of your volumes of Conversation with God.
Well, thank you. And a check is in the mail.
That's what they all say. Thank you so much, God.
Thank you, dear.
Is there anybody else who has
like
something
to
they would
speak?
like to ask or share? Because I'm here with you for another 36 seconds.
Oh, he went from 8 hours to now 36 seconds left. Come on, you shy people.
I have a question, Kenji and Neale.
Wait a minute, where are you?
Gregory, he's got his hand up and he's in his car.
I'm not driving though. I'm parked.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
A likely story.
There you are.
So first, I just felt compelled to share this with you, Neale, right in this moment. I was in a bookstore in Tucson, Arizona in probably 1998 and had one of those experiences where I was in a section of Borders bookstore and pulled out your book and started reading it. And it, you know, it had a really powerful impact on me. But my question is, why do you think your book found me? Or why do you think it finds individual people?
Well, I think it found you, Gregory, because you wanted it to. And I think it finds people because they're looking for it. I think that life proceeds out of our intentions for it. And whether those intentions are stated consciously or unconsciously, that when the soul seeks, the soul finds. Or as someone less poetically put it a few years ago, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And that's exactly what I think happened to me. That you might as well ask me, you know, how could I have made that contact? You know, and the answer is desire. Desire produces that for which we yearn. And some people might say, well, I didn't really feel consciously that I was looking for some kind of answer to life's great mysteries. But often those yearnings are subconscious below the immediate level. And for others, it's very conscious, very much a part of their cosmology to look for those answers. But I suspect that at some level, you were looking for an answer to some of life's largest mysteries, and the book did everything but jump off the shelf at you.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. And that's virtually why everything comes to me that arrives in my life. I noticed that it's my desire, that it's a metaphysical reality. And that which I deeply desire, what I desire most of all, and what my soul understands to be deeply in line with my soul's agenda, will occur in my life. To give you a simple example, Gregory, I tell the story, and my wife is okay with my telling the story, but my wife actually asked me to marry her. I was totally in love with her, but I was kind of like a little reluctant, just a little bit, not quite sure, but she would say yes. And then one day she looked across the car, we were driving along, and she was in the passenger seat, and she said, "I think we should be married." And I remember saying to her, "You don't want to say that twice to me." She said, no, I really think we should be married. And I put out my hand across the front seat of the car and shook her hand, and I said, "Done." And the next day we flew to Las Vegas and went to one of those 20-minute wedding chapels where you get a marriage license from the courthouse, and 20 minutes later, you go to a marriage chapel and you throw a couple $100 at the minister and he marries you. It's legal, totally legal. You're then married. You walk out of the chapel and you say, "Okay, done." And that was 13 delicious years ago. So I think that life proceeds out of our intentions for it. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I have experienced.
Neale, I have a question.
Yes, my dear.
This is Val from New York. It's really, I feel ingenuine even asking it, as if it's some place in me I already know, but I'm absolutely horrified by what you just shared, because it threatens my proclivity to be an information junkie and just jam myself full of studies and processes, and I don't know how to start. I don't know how to start. I guess I don't know how to start, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but you got to tell me, start what?
Teaching, sharing, knowing,
My dear, the living of your life. You don't have to write a book. You don't have to give a class. You don't have to give a class. You don't have to deliver lectures. The living of your life is a teaching. Everyone who is in contact with you is taught something about life. I promise you.
Yes.
And when you move through life in a particular and certain way, they move away from that encounter with you, having learned something, often something they hadn't really realized that is made real. They haven't realized it until they encountered you, and they walk away from you and they might say, "Wow, I just learned what it means. I just learned what it means to be tolerant and compassionate and understanding and forgiving and kind and gentle and simply nice. I just met the nicest human being. And she's taught me more than I've learned in 20 years. She taught me in 20 minutes. Have you guys met Val? Oh my God. You got to just be with this person. If you're lucky, you'll run into her at the post office or at the coffee shop or at the grocery store. If you're lucky, you will meet and know Val. And that, my dear, is how you can share what it is you have in your heart to share. But don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if somebody says, or somebody else says, how, I don't understand, Val. How, what do you know that I don't know? Where did you find this? Or better yet, how can I get some of that? And don't be surprised if you catch yourself one night saying, well, on Tuesday evenings at 7:30 at my place, we have a little support group. And it's not a big deal. We don't have like 80 people coming or even 8 people coming. It's usually 3 or 4 of us, but we sit around in a circle, and I often find myself sharing what's in my heart.
That's already true.
Well,
Yeah.
then there you are. You've just answered your own question, which is exactly what you predicted at the beginning of the conversation that you would do.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Neale. My name is Sandra. Can you hear me?
I can, Sandra.
So I want to go back to your statement about desire.
Sandra, I have to ask you a question first.
Sure.
Where do you buy your hair?
It's my natural hair and natural color.
That you didn't buy that? That's how you actually comes out of your head?
That comes out of my head. Yes.
Oh my golly. That's
Thank
unbelievable.
you. It's actually messy, but okay.
Wow. Okay. Excuse me, but I had to make a comment. Okay, please tell us, what is your question?
That's funny. So I wanted to just kind of go, when you said your desire produces that for which you learn. Like, what about if you keep having a repeated pattern that you don't really like? And maybe it's a pattern where you don't feel like you fit in. What do you recommend for that?
Breaking the pattern.
But how do I go about doing that? Like, what do I ask God?
You don't ask, in my view, God for anything. See, I've stopped asking God for anything. I don't say, God, please help us gain more understanding, or God, please bring me this, or help me get over my feeling of not fitting in, or any of those things. I've stopped asking God for stuff 20 years ago. I simply declare, as I point out in my book, The God Solution. What would life be like if you simply declared what it is that you choose to be true for you? Let me give you an example, a striking example, Sandra. A man named Jesus. Have you ever heard of him?
Yes.
Okay. He is reputed to have taught us how to pray. It's said that he went to the mountaintop and taught people how to pray. And the prayer that he taught us, whether you're Christian or not, has stood the test of time. And 2,000 years or more later, billions of people are repeating the same prayer. It's called the Lord's Prayer. Have you ever heard of that? Oh,
Yes.
interesting.
Yep.
Well, look at the Lord's Prayer, my dear. It's not a request for anything. It's not a request for anything. It's a demand, if you please. It's a command. Or if you please, it's a calling forth of what we want and what we now command that God give us. God is at our service. God says, you don't understand our relationship. I'm here to serve you. You're not there to serve me. What do you want? And Jesus said, it's very simple. Give us this day our daily bread.
Bread.
Among other statements. God didn't say, please find a way to give us our daily bread. We send this urgent request to the universe. Please send us this day our daily bread. And please forgive us our debts and our trespasses. And please, God, lead us not into temptation. No, see, Jesus didn't make any request of anybody. He simply said it directly. This is what I choose. This is what I declare. This is what I command. Give us this day our daily bread. And lead us not into temptation. And forgive us our trespasses. Direct statements. So, my dear Sandra, you begin by asking God for nothing, but by saying to God, I choose now to know that I fit in wherever I go. And the fastest way that I fit in is by seeing no one as other than an extension of myself. I see perhaps differences, but not divisions. I see perhaps contrasts, but not conflicts. I see everyone as an extension of me. I am one with everyone. And I experience myself and project myself that way when I walk into any place where there is any other person. And I project the feeling of total acceptance and total love with everyone else. You do that for 90 days and tell me you feel out of place.
Okay.
It's not going to happen.
Okay.
But we find ourselves challenged by the opportunity because so many of us are not used to interacting with others in that way.
Yeah.
You know, there are 3 magic words you could say. Did you ever see the movie Avatar?
Yeah, but I'm kind of like ins and out.
Well, in the movie Avatar, it was one of the few romantic films made by Hollywood where the romantic thing we could say to each other is never said. The words, I love you, never appear in the script of that movie. Nobody says those words to anybody else in the movie. Do you remember what they do say to each other when they're in love?
No.
I see you.
I see you. Mhm.
I see you.
That's great.
So if you want to not feel out of place when you're in the space with other people, once in a while you might gently say, you know what? I see you. I see who you are. I just saw you being very generous right there, emotionally and physically generous with that other person. I just saw you being very compassionate with that other person. Whoa, you know what? I just saw you be very understanding with that other human being. You may not think anybody noticed, but I see you. You behave that way for 90 days. Not only will you not feel out of place, you'll be like, off. Get off of me. Everybody's going to be following you around. They'll be following you down the street. Because you'll
Okay.
because you'll be giving them what they yearn for. Recognition. Recognition. They will feel known again. All we all want, Sandra, is to feel that what our ideas about ourselves that we've had since we were young are true. I only want you to see me the way I see me when I'm in love with myself. And if Sandra says to Neale, oh, wow, Neale, I see you. I totally see you. You'll never be out of place in my world.
Okay. Thank you. Good information.
I could, of course, be wrong about all of this. I don't think so.
No, good feedback. Thank you.
You're welcome. By the way, you missed a chance.
For what?
You could have said, "Oh, Neale,
I see you.
I see you."
I do see you. Okay, that's good.
It feels good. And I
Yes,
know you
I
meant
do.
it.
I do.
Wonderful.
Thank you again.
You're welcome.
Very helpful.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the comment on my hair too, even though it's a wreck.
You're welcome. Well, guys, if there are no more hands raised and no more questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
Nancy.
Well, actually, I see another hand raised, unless Gregory, you finished.
Oh, I have another question.
Okay. I just want to thank you, Neale. It's been beautiful. I've enjoyed all of it. And your presence is palpable. So thank you. I see you.
Oh, that's a very sweet thing. That's a very sweet thing to say. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you both. Thank you. It's very sweet. Gregory,
Gregory?
what is it that you wanted to ask before we say goodbye?
I was on a spiritual path that I lost, and I find it very hard to give myself the permission to get back on that path. And it feels like I'm waiting for something. I don't know whether it's permission or action or declaration. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on that, on how could I get beyond that resistance?
What you resist persists, and what you look at disappears. That is, it ceases to have its illusory form. My dear Gregory, I do not see you as impotent. I do not see you as powerless. I do not see you as unable. I see you as having perhaps convinced yourself that in this particular instance you are unable, but I don't see yourself. I don't see you as that. So you simply have to make a determination. You know what? Let me ask you a question, Gregory. Have you ever had a bad habit in your life?
Quite a few.
Have you? Have you ever quit a bad habit?
I've changed. I don't know if I would say quit, but I've changed and dropped. Those habits have been dropped.
Well, okay. So quit, dropped, whatever word you want to use.
Yeah.
Name me one habit that you no longer do, that you dropped, a bad habit. Can you be open enough with me to tell me one bad habit that you changed? I can tell you one in mine. I was a smoker since I was 14 years old. And I stopped.
The same.
I stopped smoking. And you stopped smoking as well?
And all other chemicals as well.
Well, my dear Gregory, how the hell did you do that? A person who's powerless like you? How did you do that? Oh, I see. I see. One day you decided to. You simply chose to. Wow. Isn't that an interesting observation? So apparently your decisions have a lot of power. So I suggest that you stop telling yourself that you can't get back to that path because you're making that all up. You made it all up. But you haven't convinced me. You've only convinced yourself. And I'm not buying it.
All right, Neale. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Sandra, you can mute yourself, please. Hey, Neale, as
Yes.
we can leave and continue this wonderful conversations, how about a healing meditation for all of us? And we'll leave on that note when you complete that. And we will send the chat notes to my webmaster to put in the replay for all of you.
I would offer this. I know in the depth of my being who we all are. And I know in the depth of my being that all of us here in this community of souls that have gathered to share this moment are moving to a deeper and richer and grander expression and experience of our true identity than we may never, ever have had before. I know this as a truth because I know who you are. And I use my knowing of that as an invitation to you to know it with me as well, if you do not already embrace it. And to move together then in our mutual knowingness of the highest truth about you, about us, about life, and about God. And because I know this to be true, I can say with assurance, so it is.
Blessings, everyone. Thank you for your attendance. Have a beautiful life, a most wonderful, beautiful life. And say to your friends, I see you. Indeed. Thank you, Neale. Blessings, brother.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity and for the invitation. Bye for now.